close enough to time. We'll call the regular scheduled November meeting to order. John, would you lead us in a word of prayer, please?
Absolutely. Y'all please pray with me. Dear Lord, we thank you for this beautiful afternoon that you blessed us with. Lord, we thank you for this organization. Lord, we ask that you give us some of your guidance and help us make the right decisions this evening regarding this organization. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, welcome everybody to our regular meeting. Let's go to item number 2, approval of the minutes from the October meeting. I think that was all sent in everybody's email. Any questions or changes? Not, we hear a motion to be accepted as presented.
Second.
All in favor, raise right hand. That would be unanimous.
Just to start off.
She's still working with me. She's been at the nursing home. She went to work with me. What's her nursing home? Yeah, she did NHC. She's been over here with the since 10 years.
All right, that brings us to item number 3, approval of the minutes from the November 3rd meeting. Any changes or alterations? If not, do I hear a motion they be accepted as presented?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor, raise right hand. I think it is. I'm assuming it is. All right, that brings us to item number 4, divisional reports. Is that Keith today? Or is it John, or who's handling
I
this?
think that's Mr. Wood over
Okay.
there.
Keith?
All right, I'm just going to kind of hit the high spots here, and you should have received these in your package. And as you see there, the rate study is continuing, and we hope that they will have a report for us in the next few months. They did meet with the software company to go over any issues that we're having with the software. And they were recruiting, I think, a second cashier.
Yeah.
One has been hired, and so we're still looking for another one. In the electric department, the tree trimming is finishing up on the Fleming circuit, and they'll be moving to, I think they're going to East Main next. They put in several services there, replaced some poles, and the work with the Tamla system and the outage management system there. That's kind of a continuing process right now. And they did some repairs from the infrared study that was done a couple months ago, and they are replacing some meters and CTs and that type of everything, and several of them went to flagger training. Then in natural gas, they did some new taps and replaced 100 meters in October, so they're moving along well with the meter replacement. Repaired 2 leaks on the high pressure line. One of them was in Gray Court, and that was on the 8-inch line. And they're getting the inactive taps down lower than what they did. And they started out with a large number of those, and they're getting those down to where there are a few hundred left now. They had some guys that went to flagger training, and they've also been doing some work up at the gate station at Fountain Inn. And we had a couple of guys staying up there watching that work going on up there. The Water and Sewer Division, they had to make a repair on Barksville Circle. Root had grown into the clay pipe. There's a crack in the pipe. So it was a little bit different from the repairs they made the last couple of months where the pipe had collapsed. And they installed the tap for the new 12-inch line up at the Hunter Industrial Park for the new building. And they had a hydrant that was leaking, and they replaced it and also added a valve there. And a hydrant that was hit by a car on the East Main Street. And they were able to repair that one and didn't have to replace it. And they also finished up the work on Bryson Drive, replacing that drain pipe under the road there. There was some other pipes that were in the way with that, so they worked on that last month. Any questions on that? Or
In the electric division, then you've got that there were several current transformers that were either repaired or replaced.
yeah, those are the
Have some
CT.
CT ones, okay.
The current on the line, and it's not a self-contained meter like you would have on a house or something.
All right, anybody else? All right.
You told us to be a large elected after 2 months.
Or you jumping to the checks over 1,000?
Yeah.
We're not there yet. All right. Go say.
John, on the sewer system we got, have we started plans about how we're gonna start replacing them? But I know most of them getting, what do they say, 75?
Yeah, if you recall, we got some grant money, and we do sections at a time. To replace everything that probably needs replacing would be several $1 million, and we're just trying to do little bits at a time, particularly when we can find grant money, or just a situation where we just got to act and do things. But you're right, there's a lot of very old portions of the system right now that probably should be replaced, but as with everything else, the price of everything has just gone through the roof. Can't do it all at once, so.
Any other questions? All right, that brings us to item number 5, the public forum session. Would you be Mr. Robert Nance?
No, Richard Nance.
Richard Nance, I'm sorry. Got it wrong down here wrong. Well, welcome, Mr. Nance. If you'd like to speak, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, so I didn't know I was be doing the speaking. I thought I was going to listen to you guys' formalities.
Oh, okay. I thought that maybe you wanted to speak since you were on the agenda potentially, but.
Okay, well, I think I can condense what I need to say, I guess. Well, the issue, I think, that, the issue was my mother was being billed for a power bill that wasn't hers. And so we have been dealing with that for a couple of months now. We even got the authorities involved. We even got the post office involved because according to CPW, the forwarding address of the individual was forwarded to my mother's address. So there was a belief that someone lived with my mother. My mother is on oxygen, diabetic, she has a lot of health problems. So she had to kind of deal with this and pretty much stressed her out. So we tried to resolve it earlier by bringing what we thought was required information that would establish that no one lived there but her. So you would bring a lease agreement. So we brought that. And the other thing we were saying, well, what is the procedures in order for someone to get an account here to place on her, you know, so she can pay it. So Mr. Woods gave me that. He listed that. So we try to use those supporting evidence that they had and what we had to just get it off. Now, I thought it was going to be an easy resolution, but it wasn't. It kind of extended over into this one. So she received the bill again, along with call. Matter of fact, she actually received a call. Her last call was Friday, saying that her lights would be cut off on the next scheduling day. That was the last call she got. But I went ahead and paid that. Long story short, because I had to go get the individual, I had to go find this man. I just didn't go find this man. I had to go find this man in order for him to come down to CPW to let known that he doesn't live with my mother. That's not her bill. In order for them to get the bill off of her, in order to get to him. I had a problem with the procedures. Mr. Young, I never seen him. Nice to meet you. I talked to him. He informed me that it could be a problem with that, a little small mix-up. Part of what really bothered me with it was it took so long. It could have been, I thought it was simple resolution. Maybe the policy and formalities deemed it wasn't. And, but at the same time, I just kind of felt like even though it was resolved finally, there just didn't seem to be any type of compassion to it as well. You guys can't build compassion. You can't force that, you know. But that's kind of the feeling that I had from that. As a result of that, the very next day, my mother blood pressure went up. She had ran out of oxygen. She couldn't make it to she couldn't make it to the door, so she called me. I have a 3-minute recording of my mother with probably 10 seconds of it asking for help. The rest of it was just her breathing. So
have things been resolved?
well, yes, because I paid the bill. However, the $500 and some odd was taken out of my mother's account finally. But I just felt like I know people try a lot of stuff. You know, you guys work with the public. So people are gonna come at you with a lot of different things, scams, frauds, and so on and so on. I understand and get it. But at the same time, when it comes to power, when it comes to a necessity, because it was my mother. It was none of you guys' mother, but it was my mother. I just lost my father. I didn't want to lose her. So I actually had to go get FMLA. I just got it today to come to this meeting because I didn't have any overtime.
So let me get this straight. The bill that was billed to your mother was actually for somebody else's bill.
Yes.
So the addresses we had in our system that we were given were incorrect. Was that possibly what it was, or?
Sort of. What happens is we've got a process that we go through every year called the debt set-off process, where if a customer leaves us owing money, we have the ability to go back and garnish their income tax returns. And so we have to send them certain documents and whatnot to do that. And so the letter that we sent out to this other customer, I'm not going to say a name, but went out to another customer, and the return from the post office was very difficult to read. It looked like the address that was Mr. Nance's mother's address. So we sent a letter to that address, and this other customer to Mr. Nance's mother's address, and the customer that the bill was left unpaid actually signed for it at that address. So we were a little bit confused, but, you know, that's kind of where things kind of fell apart right there, so.
But things have been resolved as far as who owes what now, and
Right.
and we credited your mother's account, I think, is that correct?
She received a $25 check.
Well, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Unfortunately, you're exactly right. Yes, we do deal with the public in the post office and other agencies also, and sometimes there are some mix-ups, and I apologize for the mix-up in anything that negative that affected your family. But I'm glad we did finally get things resolved and corrected. All right, but thank you for coming. All right, that takes us to item number 6, the September financial report.
Okay.
Blake?
We'll start on page 6 of the financial. We look at the profit and loss for September 30th. Just barely broke even in September. Total gain of $3,636. The electric division, $36,790. A little bit off from this time last year. Gas is actually a little bit better. A loss of $78,150, and water just better than last year, $15,297. Sewer, again, at $29,700. So still a year-to-date gain of $1,195,423. We're still doing very well on our budget. Our capital asset budget is on page 11. For year-to-date, we are $210,000 under budget, or 6%. As you see at the bottom, some of our construction in progress accounts, some new ones, got Gibson Grove subdivision. We've also added some new ones for water for our SCIP grant. So those will, most of what you see for those right now are just engineering to this point. Our O&M and G&A totals on our budget are on page 14. We were $434,000 under budget for the month, or 15%, and are a little over $3 million under budget year to date. And that's, again, goes back to how we budget our natural gas purchases from last year. If you go back and look at 6442, it's right at that $3 million is our budget difference. And still managing our expenses fairly well, considering the material and supply chain crisis that we're in the midst of. I'll try to answer any questions about the financials or checks over $1,000. And Gerald, it definitely looks like that is 2 months worth of posting for Lawrence Electric, because that bill averages $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Yes, sir.
Any other questions on the checks over $1,000? Not, do I hear a motion they be accepted as presented?
So moved.
All in favor, raise right hand. That's going to be unanimous. All right. John, item number 7, recommendation to revise some language in our large service electric rate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to be very, very clear, the rate, the language that we want to change only affects our largest customers, industrial type customers. And there's actually 3 different rates. I think you've got 3 different things here. The language is the same for all 3, so you don't need to look at all of those. It would be on Let's see. If you look at the one that says 26 at the top, just 26, and you flip to the second page, you see some lines that are crossed out and then some lines that are highlighted. And we have a potential industry that is looking to build kind of a speculative building. As a matter of fact, it's under construction right now. And we are going to probably, we don't know for sure yet, we've been in negotiations with them, but we're probably going to enforce a very seldom, I don't think ever since I've been here, used clause in the rate that has to do with the size of the transformer at that particular building. In other words, when the electrical infrastructure is sized for the building, typically Bob Thomas, our electrical engineering consultant, will give us an idea as to what size transformer that particular type building needs. In days prior to COVID, prior to all of this supply chain issues and all of that, this really wasn't an issue because with the speculative buildings that we've had at Hunter Industrial Park, we didn't even put a transformer in until a prospective customer came in to buy that building and told us what size transformer that they need. But because of the length of time to get a transformer and the cost of the transformers, this has become a little bit of an issue. So this particular clause has been in our industrial rates for many, many years, but we've never had to use it. So upon this customer requesting a much larger size transformer than we think they need, we want to invoke this particular portion of that rate. And because it's been in the rate for so long and never used, to my knowledge, we started looking at the language and it was very unclear how this was structured. And from what we are told, this was a carryover of something that we just copied from a Duke Energy rate years and years ago, decades ago probably. And so what we'd like to do is just change the wording of that, take out some of these other options and just leave the portion that is in yellow here. And basically, to put it in layman's terms, so to speak, this allows us to charge for that transformer, actually purchasing it, having it connected and sitting there, not doing anything until a prospective owner comes in and buys that building and starts using electricity. There are costs associated with just having that transformer there, and without invoking this particular clause, it could sit there for years and we would never have the opportunity to get our money back out of that particular transformer. So we have talked with this developer and I think they're okay with us doing this because they want to sell that thing. And I think probably they've got a couple of buyers in mind already. So I don't think it's going to be a situation where it'll sit there for a long period of time, but we just feel like that we needed to clean this up a little bit before we turn this over to the prospective customer.
Does this cover the fact that the speculator who's putting in the building and wanting the larger transformers, if the buyer of the building doesn't need that type of load, does this cover us still after that point? I mean, the new buyer would have to abide by this also?
If you read that subject heading minimum bill, the first sentence in there says the minimum bill shall be one of the following at the CPW's option. So depending on what, in other words, if someone were to buy that building and just maybe have a couple of lights and that's all, they would either have to pay to have a different transformer put in, or we would make them pay this particular portion, which allows us to recoup our investment.
I guess my concern is, would there be a breakdown between the developer and the purchaser of the building that the developer didn't let the purchaser of the building know that this would be, what? Or you'll be talking to, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the buyer of the building anyway. So that at that point in time, you'd let them know.
Yeah, we work very closely with the Lawrence County Development Corporation. They help bring potential customers to them, as well as this development company. We would work with them and make sure that everybody's clear on that. And we've done our level best to try to educate the developer on this, but they're very firm that they want a certain size transformer in there, and he told me on the phone that they were okay with paying the additional cost to get that transformer, so.
Any other questions?
What would the additional cost be, roughly? Any idea?
Well,
It just says there.
we're still kind of negotiating sizes and all that sort of thing, but this particular provision could be between $3,000 and $5,000 a month, just for this particular part, on top of whatever electricity they use during that time.
How much does the transformer cost, roughly? Do you have any idea?
Well, the one they want is $80,000, about $80,000, and they want two of them. So, yeah. So as you can see, that's why we don't, on top of all of the infrastructure that we've got to put in just to connect that transformer up, we're talking a very significant amount of money. Now, eventually we'll get a return on it, but you know, it's going to take a long time. So this allows us to recoup some of that investment that we make in it until they get a customer in there that spins the meters.
What size of building is it?
I'm sorry?
So what size will the building be? How many?
Is it 100,000?
600,000 square.
600,000.
Wow.
15 acres.
It has all the, looks like probably some kind of warehouse, which really, it's hard for us to get excited about warehouses, but, you know, it is what it is, so.
Just y'all do something to protect us, as a warehouse.
What's that?
You just protect us and just.
That's what this does, is it protects us and allows us to get a return on the investment that we've got to put into that particular building out there.
There's several of the industries out there that have the size transformer they're wanting. And the reason they're wanting that is because they don't have a tenant yet, and they don't know who's going in there. They want to have something that will supply an industry or a warehouse. And one takes a lot more power than the other.
Any more discussion or questions? Not, do I hear a motion that we adopt these changes as presented?
A motion.
All in favor, raise right hand. That's going to be unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Brings us to the exciting stage of this evening. 2024 budget presentation. Blake?
All right.
Make it exciting.
I will.
Pressure's on.
We can do that.
All right. So I'm going to hit the highlights and kind of go over things that are very different about this year than years past. And this is just a kind of an overview of how our financials work with a chart of accounts. So our normal operating income, electricity sales, $14.5 million, lighting, $330,000, natural gas, $8,750,000. I will point out natural gas sales and expenses will be way down because last year is when we had the huge spike in pricing, and so that's kind of normalized again. Water sales, $3.9 million, and sewer charges, $2.4 million, for a total operating income of $29,960,000. Just point out a few things here. One of the big things that's different from years past is interest. Our interest income is obviously way up in this economy. So we are seeing some interest income coming in on our deposit investments, et cetera. Another thing two things that are very different. Private placement, those are our bond funds for projects that either we have already secured or will secure for projects for next year. And then we've never seen as much grant revenue as we're projecting for next year at one time with natural gas, the water that's already in place, and potentially some for the electric.
That's from the grants we've already received.
Yeah, so the water grant is already received, and that was the 10.5 million. That'll be over the next few years, so that's a portion of that. That's also a portion of the PHMSA grant. Once we get through with the environmental portion of that, we should be able to kick that one off, and that includes money for both of those projects. And the waters, I'll get into that a little bit later when we get into capital. That is three different, actually four, but starting out, it'll be three different projects that'll make up that 10.5 million. So total other income, much different than years past, $14.5 million. So our total income, less our O&M expenses and general administrative expenses, give us a net income of $14,532,000. We add back our depreciation, gives us a total capital of $17,397,000 minus our debt retirement, and then our new plant investment, what we're putting back into the system next year, $15,282,000, gives us a working capital increase of $155,000. It is recommended that all employees and commissioners receive a 3.5% pay increase. Inflation is starting to slow some, and the Fed has said that they're prepared to raise rates if they see inflation back on the rise. And just another note that Social Security Administration announced a 3.2% increase for 2024, which is much less than last year, but still a little bit better than some years. I'll hit some of the highlights on some of our big expenses. Our biggest expense, our electricity purchase from PMPA, $9.7 million, and then SEPA, our hydro at $525,000. Electric distribution, the cost to run the electric distribution system, $978,000. Like I said, our natural gas back kind of normal. Transportation, $1.2 million, and the actual purchase of the gas, $2.5 million. And the gas distribution system, a little $1.1 million for that. Raw water purchases, of course, this is elevated from years past. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk about recommended rate adjustments, $480,000 for raw water from Lawrence County Water and Sewer, $842,000 to run the water treatment plant. Water distribution, $678,000, and our sewer plant, $745,000. Skipping over to some of our larger general administrative, our group health insurance continues to increase. It's projected to be $831,000 next year, and our South Carolina retirement system contribution to $925,000. We have gotten to the top of what the General Assembly set into motion 5 or 6 years ago. So right now, there's no planned increases for that, but that is still a large budget item. Transfer to the city, we expect to be $780,000, and then our depreciation, almost $2.8 million next year. Getting into our capital expenditures, the Hunter Industrial Park substation will continue. That's a projection of what we think we'll spend next year. Those funds are already secured and sitting in a reserve account. In the natural gas division, between residential and commercial development, $1.3 million. The Gibson Grove subdivision is going to put natural gas in that subdivision. So that will most likely be contracted out, and that's what those funds are, and those are bond funds. The PHMSA grant, like I mentioned earlier, phase 1 will hopefully get kicked off in 2024. I think they're a little further behind than what they thought they would be initially. Our water, I mentioned there's 3 phases currently going. So the first will be our pump station upgrades, then our elevated storage tank off of West Main, and the water lines and controls. And then the final phase will be some demolition of West Main tank and a few other things to kind of wrap the projects up. All right. And so then our bond principal payments, our debt schedule, is a little under $1 million. Of course, those are subject to change as we secure new debt. This budget allocation chart looks much different than years past, and the reason why is capital additions, and that's because of the grant revenues that we're receiving, along with the residential and commercial and industrial developments that we're starting to see. So everything else is kind of in line with where it's been. Used to wholesale electric, gas, and water was about almost 50 cents of every dollar. And now it's kind of lowered off with capital additions. So the recommended rate adjustments, and I do want to mention that we're in the middle of a comprehensive rate analysis with a firm that we selected months ago, and we should be hearing from them in the next few months, as Keith read to you earlier. And so these are rate recommendations that we're making to get us to where we think we need to be with this budget. However, we're waiting on those results and may, come back next spring and recommend some changes to level everything out with the individual rate classes. In the electric division, the recommendation is these are all facility charge increases, nothing with consumption. So residential rate would go from $14.75 to $16 a month, or an increase of $1.25 per month. In the natural gas division, we didn't have an increase last year. We're recommending a 75 cent per residential meter increase. In water, obviously we lost our largest customer in water, Lawrence County Water and Sewer. Our expenses have increased. So what we did last year didn't quite get us to where we needed to be. We took all of our primary meters, not our additional meters, to determine where we needed to be to try to get water back to breaking even next year. You want to say anything about that?
Well, I mean, we've kind of been in ongoing negotiations with Lawrence County Water and Sewer. We're paying a highly elevated rate right now, and that we don't know if that's going to continue or if that may even go up. So we may have to come at some point and ask for additional relief there when it comes to what we pay for raw water to Lawrence County Water and Sewer Commission.
And finally, our sewer increase there will be $1.15 per month from $9.85 to $11 for a residential customer, $1.15 a month. So a residential customer who has all 4 services will be looking at a monthly additional cost of $4.65 per month. As you know, like I mentioned earlier, supply chain, transformers, the cost of the materials are having an impact on our cash flow, and unfortunately that has to be passed on to our customer base. Just a few other items that were requested in our capital budget, but we were unable to get in this year, but hopefully we'll be able to get some of those in the 2025 budget. Glad to answer any questions about the 2024 budget.
Well, you might have said this, and if I missed it, I apologize, but of the 7.3 million private placement, how much of that is grant versus how much money that we would be borrowing in bond? What's the breakout there?
So the private placement is all bonds.
All bonds.
Some of it is already secured. The portion that is already secured would be the $1.5 million that we projected for the
So the 7.3 million, none of that's grant money then? Okay, all bond.
And, you know, in the interest rate environment, we have to go out to the market next year to put in infrastructure for these developments. Hopefully, in the next few years, we'll have a chance to refinance that debt. So infrastructure in a way it doesn't impact our debt service. We've actually gotten a lot of debt paid off the last 5 years, and we don't want to get back into that cycle.
What's a vacuum truck?
What's the back truck?
Vacuum.
Oh, the other, that would be something that the sewer division would use. You know, we do have, I guess,
Big shop vac on the back of a truck.
we do have generators on
Really
the
powerful.
things now, but you know, if we had an issue with the power in the past, we've had to call like a third party to come in and handle the lift, and that's all they can do to keep up.
All right. Any other questions on the proposed budget for 2024? If not, do I hear a motion we accept it as presented?
So moved.
All in favor, raise your right hand. That's going to be unanimous.
And we'll have a vote in December too.
That will, okay.
Vote in December.
All right, that brings us to item number 9, executive session. Do I hear a motion we go into executive session and return to public session? Call the chair.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. That's going to be unanimous.